um, thank you all for coming here. That was a wonderful introduction, and it's such a pleasure coming back to Booksmith. Not only was it where I launched my short story collection, it's also the first bookstore I ever read in. When an excerpt of mine appeared in ZYZZYVA magazine, I was 5 months pregnant at the time, and it was just so special. So this bookstore means a lot to me, so thank you to Booksmith, and thank you to all of you who made it out here, I know, from South Bay, East Bay, fighting all the traffic. And I do hope before the night is over that you'll get a temporary tattoo, signature cocktail, a hand bow bow, and some other treats back there to enjoy. And I don't know where the roll of raffle tickets are, but maybe that could get sort of passed around. There are some fun surprises in store. Yeah. So, A River of Stars. I was pregnant and living with living in Southern California, and it was inspired because I started hearing about these maternity tourism hotels. And you might have heard of this phenomena, but in case you haven't, it involves pregnant Chinese women who come here about a month before giving birth so that their kids will get U.S. citizenship. Yes, exactly. So they would host, the suburban homes would get converted and stuffed with, pregnant women were coming and going, and the neighbors were baffled. To me, it sounded like a brothel in reverse. And, being pregnant myself at the time, it just got me wondering about what it was like as a woman in one of those vulnerable times of my life. What would it have been like to live away from friends and family? And what was it about American citizenship that was so prestigious or a gold standard that they would go to these lengths? Chapter 1 opens in Guangdong province, and it's with my main character and her lover, and they're having a discussion about whether she should come. When Boss Young first told her about Perfume Bay, she tossed the brochure onto the dashboard and reached for a slice of dried mango. Shaking his head, he took the bag, but before he could stop her, she snatched a slice of chewy sweetness. During her pregnancy, he'd begun scrutinizing her, prescribing advice, some backed by science, but most by superstition, to protect the baby. She shouldn't eat mangoes, as their heat would give the baby bad skin. No watermelon, whose chill would cool her womb. No bananas, which would cause the baby to slip out early. No water chestnuts, mung beans, or bean sprouts either. The list of traditional prohibitions grew each time she attempted to eat. As he drifted into the next lane, she told him to keep his eyes on the road. He gripped the steering wheel and told her his plan. He wanted to send her and their unborn child halfway around the world to Perfume Bay, 5-star accommodations located outside of Los Angeles. After she delivered, staff would file for a social security card, birth certificate, and passport for the baby. Their son, his sex recently confirmed, would give them a foothold in America. Eventually, he could sponsor our green card, Scarlett said. For now, you'll get rid of me. Clever plan, Boss Young. At the factory, she called him Boss Young, and she cupped it up in private too, a reminder that she was a deputy manager and not a xiaojie, a mistress, a gold digger from a disco or a hostess bar. Whatever hospital you deliver in would be top class, he said. The hospitals are good in Hong Kong too, she said. Boss Young frowned. Hong Kong was also home to his wife and 3 daughters. It doesn't matter how good the hospitals are in America if I end up in jail, she said. On the radio, a newscaster announced that the U.S. Embassy was evacuating American tourists from Egypt. Boss Young stabbed his finger at the radio dial. The U.S. would save our son, he said. From Egypt, she asked. Why would he go to Egypt? From anywhere, he said. The U.S. would get him out of trouble anywhere. That was when Scarlett had realized just how much his son meant to Boss Young, reviving the dream that had died with the birth of his daughters, an heir to carry on his legacy. He had never shared this dream with her, for a boy in his image, a prince of the family. He was almost 60, she was 36. If Scarlett carried a girl, would Boss Young have sent her to Perfume Bay? No. He'd waited to book her a stay until he knew she was having a boy, but objecting to such a preference would have been like objecting to gravity. He sped up, picking off tractor trailers and buses, which still gave her a thrill. Faster and faster they went, getting so far ahead it seemed they might have the road's end to themselves. With him behind the wheel, she might go anywhere. He put his hand on top of hers, lacing their fingers together, and she tucked her head against his shoulders. She never felt more complete than when nestled against him. If she didn't have this baby, she might never, not with him or with anyone else. So, Scarlett does end up in LA, but things don't go quite according to plan. On her own, Scarlett could have expected deference and attention. One pregnant woman gets a seat on the bus, the front of the line at the bathroom, and good wishes from strangers who pat your bump, ask how far along you are, and guess if you're carrying a boy or a girl. At the sight of a fertile belly, the most hardened can't help but hope for the future, can't help but long for the past. A dozen pregnant women is a different matter. You quarrel over who gets the most comfortable seat at dinner, who eats the last of the tofu stew, and whose aches are the most deserving of sympathy. Deep into her 8th month of pregnancy, she thought the other guests at Perfume Bay would lose interest, but they wouldn't stop picking on her. On television, the Hollywood sign appeared, iconic letters that stood a few kilometers away, yet seemed distant as the moon. After Scarlett turned up the volume, Lady Yu grabbed the remote and switched the channel. Because Scarlett never bragged about Boss Young's position, because she never mentioned him at all, the other guests found her suspect. She was a threat, not because she'd go after their husbands, but because she represented any woman, every woman who could. It didn't matter that her lover was a stranger to them. Mistresses weren't supposed to have children who competed with theirs. Lady Yu made it clear that she considered Scarlett and the baby she carried lowly as turtle's eggs. Nothing was more despicable than a turtle dragging itself through the muck, except its spawn. Lady Yu led the Shanghai clique of spoiled wives who were perhaps only a generation or two removed from the countryside. In Scarlett, they despised whom they might have been. Scarlett changed the channel back. 没有文化, 农民, low class, a peasant. She hurled a magazine at Scarlett, missing wildly and hitting the television. 土豪, an insult for the newly rich, with more money than manners. Lady Yu heaved herself up and slapped Scarlett. Scarlett rocked back in disbelief, putting up her hands to protect her belly. Lady Yu smiled smugly, the sort who beat her servants. Scarlett grabbed a pillow and smacked it against Lady Yu's head. When Lady Yu clawed at her, Scarlett grabbed her wrists and forced her arms down, twisting almost hard enough to sprain. Their screams set off one baby, then all 10 babies in the nursery next door. Howls that picked up with the speed and power of a tsunami. The owner, Mama Fang, rushed in, trailed by nurses to separate the mothers-to-be, clucking they shouldn't exert themselves. They should consider their babies and sent them to their rooms. At Perfume Bay, the mothers were treated like children so that their children would obtain the most precious gift of all, American citizenship.